So welcome back to the Joe and Co podcast. Today on, we have my uncle Vance. He has been a hero of mine my whole life. Showed me how to work on stuff, has showed me how to act, showed me how to be a husband and a father. Just somebody I really look up to. Obviously, raised by my grandfather, who we both learned from a ton. And, it really is an honor. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Glad to be here, man.
So you've never done any podcasts or radio shows before or anything?
No, just sitting BS with a bunch of people mainly, but nothing like this.
With some of the stories that you have and stuff like that, I kind of wondered. It was like, man, I wonder if he hadn't taken over a radio station back in high school or anything. So we're gonna start with some real simple icebreaker stuff that just gets you in the mode, makes you forget you got your headphones on and stuff like that. So what's your favorite food, Vance? What's your final meal?
Probably a nice steak, mashed potatoes. That sounds real good to me.
Right. And how are we cooking the steak?
Medium at the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the most.
So, all right. Well, what about, do you read much?
Mainly not for pleasure, just to learn stuff.
Right. Do you have a favorite book, something that's really taught you about anything?
No, nothing, just manuals and things like that. I read a lot of, Mad Magazine, I guess, stuff like that when I was younger. Nothing that I would just draw to all the time.
Sure. What about a favorite movie?
There's a few of those. I like a lot of car shows. American Graffiti's always good. I like Tombstone quite a bit. It ranks pretty high on my go-to review again. Things like that, usually. Just things like that, movies like that.
Some Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
You love that show, yes.
Right. It's amazing how many of our wives don't like it.
Yeah.
It's such a good show.
Mine definitely hates that.
And Tombstone
Yep.
has probably been one of the answers of 75% of our guests so far.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely on my list. And like several people that have never seen the show before come on and say, yep, Tombstone.
Nice.
So what kind of music do you prefer, Vance?
So I listen to a little bit of everything. I enjoy blues. I listen to jazz. I've been to New Orleans and listened to some blues down there and jazz. Really enjoyed that. I like old music, ranging from I guess the 1800s all the way up to 1980. Mid 80s, music of all kinds. I like all that. Just depends on what the mood is that I listen to.
Right. I remember you talking to me about New Orleans because I think it was the same person where you got your shoes.
Oh yeah. That was the topic of people running up to you and they'd say, hey, I can tell you where you got your shoes at. And they'd charge like 10 or 15 bucks and they'd say, I can tell you right where you got your shoes. And the answer is, of course, I'm, New Orleans on Bourbon Street. And then they'd run away and go, keep it alive. That was they did that quite a bit.
Right. I was going on vacation there and you told me about that. And that guy was old enough that I think it was probably the same guy described him. And it was, pretty close.
Yeah.
What about foods you don't eat?
Wow, there's I only dislike very few foods. I'm not a big turnip fan. I'm not a big radish fan. They kind of taste similar to me. Not a big sweet potato fan. Other than that, I pretty much like anything else. I'll eat any kind of vegetable. I'll eat squid. I've tried alligator, frog legs, all that stuff always tastes really good. I've always gone back and ate it again. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So, and this is one I've been waiting to ask you because Grandpa had the 23T bucket and you had that old, was it a Buick, that black car?
It was a 47 Plymouth.
Plymouth.
Yeah, I got that from a real good friend of mine who passed away. It was a 47 Plymouth business coupe, which, man, it actually had the back seat in it. And we picked it up. It had the original 6-cylinder in it. We pulled it out, my dad and I, and we were going to put a small block 350 in it. And then we changed our path and decided to go with a 388 60 over stroker kit in it. And we built it up and put a turbo 400 in it and changed the rear end because the rear end didn't last maybe a week after I put the new engine in it because I got a little carried away from a dead stop, launching it a little hard. So it started crack the spider gears in it. So we pulled that rear end out and put another rear end into it, a 12 bolt out of a full-size car. It just fit in there just right, and then we ended up painting the car red. It ran very good. In fact, Dad said that was one of the races that we did. I got him to take the Roadster out there, and I took the Plymouth out on Andover Road a while back and a few years ago, and we lined them up, and we just took off. Of course, the Roadster beat me, but I twisted it pretty tight, the car, and I hit second gear, and it ended up throwing the weight, the counterbalance, the flywheel on it is counterbalanced, and the welded, tacked on counterbalance flew off and cut through my fuel line and the brake lines on one side of the car before I stopped. But Dad was about a half a car length ahead of me just before that had happened, and that was about 3/4 of the way through second gear after we'd taken off, and it was a really good race. I wish I would have had pictures of that because it was pretty. At least to me, it was pretty epic. Dad thought it was pretty impressive too, because he'd raced a few sport bikes at the time, 90s sport bikes, and he'd take him for the most part through like the quarter, but then right at the end of the quarter, going into the next half mile is when the sport bikes would always hammer by, because the T wasn't really aerodynamic to do anything like that way fast. So,
right. Back then, the sport bikes, the high-end sport bikes were what, like the Norton Commando and stuff like that, or?
Oh, they had Honda Interceptors. Back then, they had the Ninjas. They were pretty popular. I think the Gixxer 750 was around, and I can't remember what the one was above the 750 Gixxers. But yeah, they were just the ones that would zip around quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, that T was pretty impressive. And I actually remember that day. I was too young, like I wasn't allowed to go.
Yeah.
We were over at Grandpa's house, and I remember Mom kind of describing, because Mom's not a mechanic, but she kind of described that something came loose, and if it had come loose in the wrong direction, it probably would have smoked you.
Oh, yeah, it would have ended up cutting my, probably my ankles where it was at, because we've moved the engine back in the car just a little bit to help it launch a little harder. And when the chunk, it actually went to the right instead of flying off in any direction. There for a long time, you could see the chunk in the pavement where it had hit the frame and then bounced down. And then I just idled the car back. I should have probably towed it, but I just idled it back real easy and back to the house and then pulled it all apart. Actually got a counterbalance that was looped that would go around the crankshaft, and had to position it just right where I bought a new flywheel and that loop so that it wouldn't do it again.
Nice. So that being said, if money's not an object, what's the dream car? What would you go get? And how would it look? What would it be like?
See, I don't think I could just have one car. I tend to already do that now. I tend to buy a bunch of cars just for every aspect of what I do. Like if I like going and cutting wood, so I have a 3/4 ton truck that I put wood into, and then I've got a half-ton Chevy C10 67 that I use as my just drive around beater. I enjoy that. I do really I like Corvettes. I like old Chevelles. Narrowing it down, I wouldn't mind. I could drive a Model A with a small block in it to work every day and be extremely happy until wintertime comes, and then I'd have to drive something else. But just my go-to currently would need to be, I'm going to say, probably I like 32s, but that's, 32 Fords, but I like them with Chevrolets instead of the Fords. I mean, nothing against Ford. That's what I know real well. So, yeah.
Right. Was 32 the I remember a story that somebody told me about the the hood ornament. Was it 32 and 33 or 33 and 34? The animal had a lower on it, and then Mr. Ford's wife got upset about it.
Yeah, so I think that was the 33, 34s because they looked similar. There's just a few minor changes on those. But the 32 is actually the first year for the V8 in an automobile for here, in the United States.
Okay, that's the draw for the 32.
Yeah.
Okay. And all right, what is your biggest pet peeve? What do people do that just it grinds?
Wow, that list is somewhat long. Usually, at least for me, I at least for the people that I see at work and stuff like that, if they just tell me the truth, doesn't really matter what it is. I'd rather get past and through whatever the issue is so that we can move forward. But I despise when they tell me something or create some feeble story about, anything. And then it just wastes my time. I just wish no, just tell me this or, whatever the issue is, just tell it to me so I can move forward and go on. I think that's pretty much it for recently.
Okay. So, that kind of wraps up like some of the icebreaker questions, and, you seem like you're getting comfortable. Man, tell me your story. Tell me about growing up and,
So I just assumed everybody's life was like mine. I thought that for years. But growing up, I'm going to say this, and most people probably not agree, but I just had like the perfect life. I lived out in the country. My dad at a young age taught me how to ride a motorcycle. I was 3, and he taught me how to drive the go-kart. I got a go-kart, and I'd have to put pillows behind me to actually touch the throttle and the gas, and then I realized in short time that the throttle and the brake, and learned in short time that the brake portion of it wasn't really necessary because it would just slow me down and irritate me. So the throttle, and we had a go-kart track that I would race around at night, and Dad would pull the head off to give it just a little bit more power and shave it down. And so he put a megaphone on the go-kart and it would shoot flames. I'd go around in this big circle track go-kart track and letting off, and you'd see the flame, biller out, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I did that, and then he got me a dirt bike when I was fairly young, a Yamaha 60. It was yellow and black that I rode around, and we ended up going to Missouri in Chadwick in Christian County. There's a little town there called Chadwick, Missouri, inside Mark Twain National Forest, and you can ride all of these trails. And I was young, and so of course I wasn't the greatest, and a lot of my dad's friends would get kind of irritated with me on being behind, or I was the slow one, and but Dad had a good time. He'd stayed towards the back and watched me, and I was like the second to the rear of the whole group. And over time, we went down there through the years over 30 times. I believe it was just under 40 times that we ended up going and riding. And through the years, I kept graduating bigger and bigger bikes to the point of having a DR 400 Suzuki. I think it was a 1981. And we'd go right up the trails, and I got really good about riding up these really tall trails, making it up to the top. But when I was young, I would go up and I'd slide off the back of the motorcycle. So my dad would get off his and he'd go up there and hang onto the bike. I'd get on, start it, and then he'd hold me until I got it in gear. And then he'd like give me a push for me to go on up the hills. And of course, there's pretty good sized rocks. So the taller you got, the bigger you got, the taller the bike. You could actually start going over some of these things. During the time when I got the little Yamaha 60, he would teach me. He kept talking about wheeling, and so I would take it, and there was a little bump where sidewalk was out in the country that I would drive through the yard and then hit this little bump and keep doing that for hours. Like I'd run it out of fuel and I'd keep hitting this bump, and I'd kept pulling it up, and I kept wheeling better and better, farther and farther, to the point that I could, when I was 15, 16, I could wheelie down the road, down a normal highway with like a 2-lane, and I could pass cars, and I'd pull around them, run up about 60, pull back into the lane, keep wheeling. And I think the farthest I've ever wheelied, I mean, I could have wheelied longer, I just had to stop, was a little over 3 miles. I just ride and I could go up to intersections and turn the corner, on the rear wheel. And I rode down some stairs on a motorcycle on the rear wheel, just boom, 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 going down real slow. And then I got to the point in Missouri that I could ride up a hill wheeling too, but you couldn't go too far. You just always had to keep it where the bike was straight. So sometimes the bike wasn't wheeling that high, but it was still off the ground, so you could still go up and over the hill. So yeah, those were some good times in my life.
Yeah, I've met people that didn't know our relation, and they would still tell me about this little kid going around Chadwick, Missouri. And, they'd be schooling me on, old Chadwick, Missouri. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. And they talk about this, man, there's this one day, this kid that he went everywhere on his back tire. And I said, yeah, by chance was his name Vance?
Yeah.
How did you know that? That was before you were born. Well, yeah, it was.
Yeah, I did. Recently, I did that down in Wichita, down Oliver on my current motorcycle. I'd wheelie down that road periodically just to stay sharp and things like that. So.
Yeah. And you have what years, you have a Hayabusa. What year is it?
It's a 2019 Hayabusa.
Yeah. I remember you calling me and, hey, where do you get patches? And do you know where to get a 200 mile an hour plus patch?
Yeah. So, some friends of mine, we all sat up. There was 5 of us that ended up going out to a deserted road, 2-lane, and we set up. We had a radar gun, and we had a couple of cameras, and then I invited 2 guys to bring their rifles out because I was trying to think ahead that if they saw an animal start to run to the road while I was riding down the road, because I wanted to see how fast the bike would go, to shoot it, like if a rabbit went out there or something like that. So we went down and to a place I'll tell you about later on, that we went and sat it out, and I rode the road. It was a mile stretch, and I went out the first spot, there was a little drop in the road, and I didn't think much about it, but I crossed it about 185, and the bike danced a little bit because it went down and then lost traction. So we moved down another quarter of a mile to try to miss that low spot until when I was taking off. So when I'd take off, I'd start off going through the gears, and I'd float the front wheel about a foot off the ground up to about 140. And then I would lean forward and set it back down between 140 and 150, and then roll the throttle. And they were clocking me the first few times. The guy with the radar gun was not picking it up. He said, "You're going by me so fast, I can't turn the radar gun fast enough to catch you, but you're still increasing in power." So we finally got that worked out. And I ended up doing about 8 passes over 200 on the bike. The lowest one that he clocked me at was 213. Then it got 218. And then, so what I did was just move back a little bit farther and went past him faster than that. And then he cleared it. So we didn't have a picture of what it was, which was disappointing but the bike was pulling very hard at that time. It wasn't a stock bike. I'd changed it. I'd piped it. It had been flashed. I changed a bunch of things where the sprocket slides in. I ended up going with urethane bushings in there, so it was a little bit smoother. I went with ceramic bearings just so the wheel would roll smoother. I even pulled the tires off before we did and balanced the rim, and then re-drilled the hole so that it would take the least amount of weight on it possible. And I did a few other things, removing some emissions equipment off of it too, because I just wanted to make sure it was pure throttle, when I was going through there, and that was really comfortable. It was a really nice pull. That was like a really great day. I enjoyed that. And we ended up having a sheriff's officer ended up pulling up there because he kept hearing the bike, it'd be a dead time, and then it'd wah, 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 go flying by. And he pulled up off to the side of the road and parked in the field and spoke with us for a little bit and asked us what equipment we were using and showing him, and didn't know if we were putting it on YouTube or not. I said no. And he said, "Do you mind if I just sit here and watch it?" He goes, that bike sounds amazing, running through. I was fully expecting to get a ticket or something like that, but he never did. It was really pretty cool for him to just hang out and watch that. And I ended up doing it, I think 3 more times after that, after he'd pulled up.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, sometimes the cops they just want to see the neat thing too, the nice thing too.
Yeah.
So growing up riding motorcycles, growing up out in the country, and you're from out here in Andover, where we're recording right now. And what was high school like? I mean, no cell phones. I mean, the culture was a lot different. And I've been seeing a lot of videos, stuff on Facebook they kind of remind me of little products or just the way things smelled and the way things were. And I just kind of wonder what high school was like, before all that.
So high school for me, I absolutely had a blast in high school. I had a blast. In fact, I didn't miss any time in school. I always came to school because I always enjoyed seeing literally everybody. There wasn't a single person that I didn't enjoy seeing in high school and talking to and hanging out with. There was always things going on. I remember once I got into high school, looking out in the parking lot, wishing that we could just take a picture of all of the cool cars. There were so many cool cars in the parking lot, from the guy that drove the Volkswagen all the way up to there was a 70 SS Chevelle. There was I remember there's an old Chrysler 300 that was just super cool, rare at the time. And I even told the girl that was driving, I was like, my God, that car is, really cool. It's like, that's my dad's car. He made me drive it today. And she was actually unhappy about it. But yeah, everybody had pretty cool Opel GTs. Yeah, just a vast variety of vehicles. But the parking lot looked like a car show every day. Every day that you'd go to school, you'd pull in, and that part was great. The teachers seemed more genuinely wanting to teach the people back then. I mean, they seemed more concerned about what you were learning and things like that, and actually finding the problems or the questions to your problems that you're asking. All that seemed great. There wasn't a day in school that I did not enjoy it. It was good. The 80s were great, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I never had the traditional high school experience. So I only can go off of the stories and the movies and the different stuff, but it did seem like a different time, but watching movies and stuff, you weren't a football player. You weren't, and if you watch American movies, if you're not the jock, you're, just another guy or whatever, but you enjoyed the hell out of the vehicles, and you seem to bring kind of the culture to the high school at that time.
Yeah, I tried talking to everybody, hanging out with everybody. I enjoyed art, the art group. I enjoyed everybody that was in drama. I hung out with those guys. I hung out with the art group we called advanced clay throwing at the time, but everybody had a real good time. The teachers were amazing. My shop teachers, my metal shop teacher and my wood shop teachers were very cool. The activities director, he was all right. He was, just doing his job all the time. So he is a little angry, but nothing, overwhelming. The English teachers, government, everybody, everybody seemed, in my world at least, I thought everybody got along and did really well at the school. And I just again, I assumed that every day everybody else was like that at the same time.
Right. Well, and I remember, you talk about you worked at the local mechanic shop when Grandpa did, right?
Yeah, I worked at Malcolm's Auto Center back in the day, pumping gas, changing oil, fixing tires, things like that. I really enjoyed that time. Yeah, it was a blast.
Right, spinning tires, and I remember you saying you'd clock yourself how quick you could change a tire, and
yeah, me and another guy he ended up working there later on too, and we would end up seeing who could, zip the tires off fast and put another one on, and tell them, the customer is like, all right, it's going to take you this long, and they'd be in mental turmoil about it and think that they needed to get it done quicker, especially during harvest season. No matter what it was, that was the biggest product we needed to move. Is like, get them back out in the field so they can do what they need to do.
Yeah. I remember, Grandpa telling stories, and I'm sure you were working there about the same time. Grandpa was on the local sheriff's department, in the reserves, and him, the times were different. The police cars were actually souped up by you guys.
Yeah. So there was a person on the sheriff's department, who Dad was rebuilding an engine for. It was a Plymouth that had a 440 in it. And it had a certain amount of miles that they needed to go ahead and pull the vehicle apart and freshen up the engine, in quotation marks, but they needed to, it needed to meet, this is how much money we have to put into it. So don't, whatever a stock rebuild was. So the sheriff's officer at the time, who I'm not going to say his name, but he came to Dad and said, hey, look, if you give me this cam, I'm looking at it because him and Dad had went through and looked at the cams. And he said, hey, if you give me this cam, he goes, I think it'll pull the best. I will pay the extra money. And it was minimal money at the time. and it's minimal money when you think about it now, but it was like $65 or $75 for this extra better cam and lifters and valve springs and stuff like that. So he brought the heads in, and that's another thing. When I before I started working at Malcolm's, I ended up going. I would stay in the back, and I would help my dad work on engine heads and things like that. And I'd do valve jobs. I started doing valve jobs really young. They're like 11, 12. I started, putting new valves in them, checking the guides, making sure everything was set right. I'd do leak tests on them and things like that. So we ended up porting the heads on that sheriff's officer's 440 just to give it a little bit more breathing room with that cam. And what I guess I'm saying is the leading up to is later on there was a guy who was out running the cops, and for whatever reason Sedgwick County seemed to always direct anybody that was out running the cops towards Butler County back in the day, back in the 80s. They would run them to Butler County because Butler County would end up catching them. They had their vehicles always ran just a little bit better and a little bit faster. So this guy's running down the road. There's a trooper behind this guy, and he'd ran through Andover. And the guy who we'd rebuilt the engine, or my dad had rebuilt the engine for, he pulled in behind the guy, past the trooper, and busted that guy down the road and slowed him down. And that guy's like, what? We didn't realize what's that car got in it. It's like, it's just stock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a stock police car that outruns all the other police cars.
Yeah.
That had to be a bigger thing back then, the police cars and, people always working on their cars and stuff. It had to be a little bit more kind of like the police are now with sport bikes,
Oh yeah.
what are you going to do?
Yeah. There was there's a few times I eluded a few officers as well. And there was a lot of times that I got more recognition for that than everybody thought. Like they just assumed that anytime there was a high-speed chase that I was the one that was actually doing it. And it wasn't like that. I did do it a few times, but it wasn't to the level of like my mom assumed that every time that she heard it on the scanner, it was me. But yeah, it was a lot more fun. Like they always said, you can't outrun the radio, but they just said that for the majority of the people, I think.
Yeah. 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 Grandma definitely thought you got into more than I think you actually got into.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But one of the stories I told you before, we have to talk about, because something you did get into. Let's talk about the little zoo at Riverside Park.
So the zoo at Riverside Park, we had me and another friend of mine were going around to estate sales and garage sales down by Riverside because they always seem to have the cooler, older stuff. And so we're going around, and we always talk about if somebody was selling something, if it was a gun, that we always were interested in, picking up a rifle or a pistol or something. Anyway, we stopped by this one place that had a pistol, a little small pistol. And I don't remember if it was a 25 or a 32 automatic, but the thing was really cool. And the lady ended up selling it to us. And she had ammo with it. And so me and a friend of mine, we might have been drinking a little bit, and then we decided to stop down by Riverside Park. Back when they had the monkey cage, there was birds and monkeys in this one, and it didn't have it wasn't fenced with real. It just had bars on the monkey cage, and there were stones all around the monkey cage, fairly low. Like I'm gonna say maybe 28 inches, 24 inches tall. I don't remember because it's been so long since I've been down by that area. But we go up there, and we just pulled over to kick back for a little bit, and my friend walked up to the monkey cage, and he was screwing with the monkeys, and I told him just leave the monkeys alone. You know, they were leaping around all over the place. Anyway, they have a real bad habit of jumping down. The floor was sand, and this monkey would go down there and scoop up sand and his feces and sling it at my friend, who got a bunch of shit and sand stuck to the side of his face. So he was really mad and cussing at the monkey, and the monkey just kept slinging the stuff on him. Of course, it kept sticking to him. It was a warm day too, you know, so that just the odor was horrific. So he ran back to the car and got that pistol. I was like, good God, I wonder what the hell he's going to do. And he walked up and he grabs the bars. And when he did, that pistol flew out of his hand and landed inside the damn monkey cage. And I was like, God, these damn monkeys are going to shoot us. I said, is that thing loaded? He goes, yeah, I put bullets in it. It's got a clip in it. It had a little clip. And I was like, oh my God. Well, monkeys are extremely inquisitive. So they were leaping all down, looking down at that. And he was trying to get a stick to get it. And I said, let's get the hell out of here. This damn monkey's going to end up killing us, you know, with the gun we just bought. Anyway, he was trying to get a stick, and the monkey realized what he was going to do. My guess is, and he shot down there and grabbed that pistol, and I dove behind the rocks and started crawling. And I told him I said, get behind the rocks. That monkey's going to shoot you, you know, because you've been messing with it. And so we crawl away. And of course, my car's not very far away from that spot. And about that time, you hear this, you know, the monkey making monkey noises, and it fires off. And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, the monkey dropped the pistol, but it was still in the middle of the cage. And he shoots up into the corner of the cage. And so I told my friend, I said, get in the car, let's get the hell out of here, because cop's going to hear the gunshot, which that's a sound you didn't hear back in the 80s either. So we jumped in the car and we shot out of there and went down not very far away to this bar, the 9th Street bar or 10th Street bar, something like that at the time. And he went in the bathroom and cleaned up, and his shirt is just soaked, you know, because he was taking soap and cleaning it. And you could hear cops, you know, the sirens driving by and stuff. I said, let's go back down there and see what's going on. Are you stable now? And he's like, he's still cussing the monkey. So we go back down there, and there's probably, I don't know, an easy 7 to 8 patrol cars around the monkey cage. So we pulled up, and back then it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, we pulled up, got out of the car, ran up behind the patrol car, and there's a cop's back there, and he's ducked down, and we asked, what's going on? And he said, there's somebody gave them damn monkeys a pistol. He goes, we don't know where the bullets are going. I guess they'd shot the patrol car in a couple of spots. Nobody got injured, and they didn't know how many bullets are in it. And he goes, you guys probably need to get the hell out of here, you know, to make sure you don't get shot or anything. And my friend was still bad-mouthing the monkeys, and the cop just kind of looked at him kind of weird and said, yeah, you guys it'd probably be a good idea for you guys to go ahead and leave. So we jumped in the car and left, and we don't know how many times, you know, the monkeys, when they finally, I think they were going to trank the monkey to get it, you know, to calm down, because there was only one main monkey. The others were all scared. They were all staying away from the one monkey blazing away. So, yeah.
The freaking homicidal monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the monkey shit friend.
Yeah, he still complains about it today, period. If I ever bring that up to him, he'll complain about it.
Well, and now it's going to be immortalized on video on the YouTube and everything. You'll have to let him know that his story is on here.
Yeah, I will.
So that guy, like and comment.
Yes, definitely.
So it was a different time, and I actually have talked to you about this podcast and doing some stuff, and I think that coming up, what I'd like to have, and we've talked about it a little bit, was in Wichita we had Dragging Douglas.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was, maybe it happened in my lifetime, but I was way too little to know what that was about. Can you just describe it a little bit? Because I want to have a few people on and have a whole list of stories of that, but just what did it look like?
So for me in the late 70s, early 80s, when I went up to the mid 80s, it was just a good place for young guys and young girls to get together and cruise up and down the road, show what kind of vehicles that you were in. Sometimes it wasn't even that. It was just a good place to enjoy talking to people and hanging out. And there's a lot of people that met their spouses, their future spouses there. There was some people there was different places you could stop for food and eat and just hang out. And sometimes you'd be down there for 6 hours driving up and down the road and pulling over and talking to guys and girls or, whoever. A bunch of your friends would go down there and they'd all show up, and then you might leave for a little bit, go get some pizza or tacos from Taco Tico or burgers or whatever, and then just everybody would meet back down there. But they always had there was just nightly entertainment of vehicles and people hanging out, and it seemed like everybody was pretty laid back. It didn't really change until later on.
Right on. All right. So here at the Joe and Co podcast, we definitely encourage everyone to get out of their comfort zone. But at my other business, J Fry Enterprises, we do air conditioning. So we absolutely want you to stay comfortable through the summer heat and the winter cold. Give us a call at 316-727-4651. Yeah. I can't imagine what life looked like. I mean, I was a little kid seeing, but I didn't really see how it was changing until things changed and we had cell phones and we had all this stuff, and it seemed like it was a lot simpler in a lot of ways.
It was. To me, it was really nice. It seemed like you got a lot more done, instead of people back then seemed to get a lot more, be productive instead of just scrolling on your phone or looking up anything. Documenting any portion of your life on the phone or, to your friends. It was just nice. It was, you were actually surprised about if you saw somebody and they come back all tan, like, where'd you go? Well, I went to Mexico for a while, or, things like that. It wasn't in real time that you knew what they were doing and everything that was going on, or, it just seemed like you got a lot more things done, things accomplished, if you're really into something, you spent the time to look it up, and learn about it or try it out.
Right. That's pretty cool. And then, growing up with Grandpa getting you into cars and everything like that, I've said it before and I've talked about it a little bit, and you've heard me say it, that, you and Grandpa's relationship, I've still never seen a father and son that were closer friends. It was just, it really did give me something to shoot for as a dad. And I've watched you do that same thing with your son, with Avery, and just bringing the kid along and letting him learn and doing all that stuff. I think that's something that's lost with time too, or, not lost, but it's just not as common anymore. And so it was when I was growing up, just watching, you were I mean, in your 20s when I was born, and you and Grandpa lived together and you did everything together. And then, seeing you do that with your boy, it really, I have learned a lot about that as far as just observing and watching. And hey, the kid doesn't need necessarily a babysitter. He's just a part of your life.
Oh yeah, I definitely. Yeah, because there's lots of things I messed up growing up, learning along the way, going, okay, probably don't need to do that anymore, or whatever. And same, I try to let my son do the same, where he's learning some stuff, like I might, hey, you probably ought to not do that, or you need to do this, or this is what I would do. And that's not completely where he doesn't just like roll his eyes or something when I'm saying something, but a lot of times he'll listen. Or my daughter, she'll like, but then I see him do it later on, so that's cool.
Right. Yeah. Slowly learning the lessons. And like you talked about, Grandpa, some of his buddies were a little annoyed when you were the slow guy in the group, but then you ended up being the best writer in the group. And
yeah, I exceeded where I was leading the group. That was the thing, at least I thought in my head, is whoever got to lead the group. So the first few times I did it, I'd purposely ride a lot faster, and then I'd notice, wow, when I'd stop, they'd say, hey, Vance, stop after a while, wait for everybody to catch up. I was like, yeah, but I've always thought they'd be right on my tail. Like, nope, it wasn't like that at all. We literally would wait a long time for people to catch it up, especially depends on the size of the group. I didn't think at the time, though, a lot of the people that were coming with us were still learning as well. So I learned that you need to, if there's others learning, even though they're older and they're learning stuff, to take the time to go ahead and, make sure they understand, or take the time to explain why you do something or why it's being done. Dad did teach me that, like, hey, it's not just because you know it, you assume everybody else does. I always did. But now I see it's like, hey, I need to take the time and make sure these people, get it,
right.
See the end story.
Well, I remember that being younger, and you'd explain something to me when we were going to do anything, work on a car or build something, and do you understand what I need you to do here?
Yeah.
Because you and Grandpa, the first time I ever drove any sort of tractor at all was a little front loader tractor that he was using to put him up to side the building.
Oh, yeah.
And the very first time, there wasn't a whole lot of practice trial runs. He showed me how it worked. He went and hopped in the bucket and said, all right, I need to go up there. But you guys were real clear with your instructions and think about what you're doing and stuff like that. And a lot of the, when I try to teach people, I see myself, doing a lot of those same mannerisms and stuff like that because they were effective. I didn't have any question that once it was explained to me, okay, I understand what's going on now, so we can proceed. It wasn't really a big question. A lot of that was because of how you guys explain things.
Yeah. Try to make it as clear as possible. Sometimes, even though you're thinking you're speaking clearly, they're like, no, this is what I'm getting out of it. It's like, what the hell? Where'd you come up with that at? But,
Right. Yeah. But I think we've got a good episode in today. I thank you for coming on. And I do want to do a whole series, just listening to stories about Dragon Douglas and stuff. And you said you had a few people that might, people that were definitely aware and they might be willing to do something like this. And I don't know whether we'll do a series of just bringing them one at a time, or if we have, 2 or 3 guys in a room talking about the different time frames and how things were and everything like that. I think, I don't know that has everything, we talk about personal growth. I don't know that it has everything to do with personal growth, but I think that, remembering good times is very beneficial. It doesn't matter what time period you live in. it's always hard times. It's all, we don't always think that we're in the best of times. Everybody thinks the world's ending, the Cold War, and nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Things like that. And so all times are uncertain, but you can look back and see how good things were. And you don't have to go back there, but it can kind of calm a person down and make them feel at home again, just to think about things they hadn't thought about in a long time. So I want to do that.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's like the thing of, I wish I could know I was in the good old days before they're gone.
Yeah.
Right. It's when we shot Grandpa's episode, Brandon actually called me the next day and kind of gave me what'd you say? I'm a little bit jealous or disappointed that you had a person like that and I never got to meet him.
Oh, yeah.
And it was realizing that we have those people, Grandpa being one of them, but we have valuable people around us and we don't realize it until it's too late, or maybe we do. But the fortunate times is when you're able to look around and realize you have what kind of gold you have before it's gone.
Yes, definitely. Speaking of in the 80s, I didn't realize at the time, I don't know what I was thinking, but at the time I didn't realize how many people were born in the 1800s that I knew, that I spoke with back in the late 70s and early 80s before they passed.
Right.
So I thought that was, looking at it now, I was like, dang, I didn't realize, I'd look up their birthdays and stuff like that. Like, this dude was born in 1890, and I always thought that was cool. And he wasn't just one of them. There was actually quite a few different people that did that.
Right.
That I had the pleasure of knowing.
That is, it seems almost like you wouldn't think that people in 2025 knew people from the 1800s.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got to hold on to those things because there's a lot of knowledge there that, like you talked about, looking things up in books.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not even super aware of how to do some of that. I can read a vehicle manual. I can do a lot of those things. But as far as going to find facts and stuff like that, it's becoming a lost art. I can still read a map.
Oh, yeah.
I can still pick up an atlas and drive across the country. But I don't know that my kids can. You're a little bit younger than me.
Yeah, I got a whole paper map of the U.S. or I got multiple ones, one of each state, and then I can read that. But I've thought about like imagine the internet goes down today, like right now, and then I'm like, hey Joe, make bread from scratch. How do you go? Okay, I need to go find a book to look. Say like you can go to the library. I'll let you go to the library, but I need you to figure out how to make bread from scratch, and stuff like that. Or bread's kind of easy, but you know what I mean.
Right. Or how to get the wheat to make the bread.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of those processes that, the machine just does it.
Yeah.
And
it's magic.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we have to do everything the hard way, but it might be kind of not, probably a good idea to remember how to do some of that stuff. So, but Vance, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Definitely. Had a great time.